because what you found is probably not true to it.
Tradition of philosophy, which takes its defining characteristics from a philosophy of Friedrich Hegel, which blah blah blah. The rational alone is real.
Yeah, it doesn't say shit.
Yeah, it's like what's real is real. Okay,
Yeah, it doesn't tell you anything.
prove it.
Well, proof is that you saw it, you're like, well, this sounds retarded, which it does, given what that says. But that's not what it is.
Yeah, this sounds
And
like it's my opinion that rationality is true and correct and the best way to go about life.
yeah,
When
that's
yeah,
not what it is.
yeah, but it says in quotes, the rational alone is real.
Well, yeah, but
Is
that's
that
not what it is.
sounded like that was like the all-encompassing.
That's not what it is.
Okay.
Right. Uh, to
Yeah, I think
understand this and to
idealism is
understand
solid.
any like actual philosophy, like you really need to understand what issue they're trying to answer. The issue, like Hegel, and it's not really a Hegel thing; it's a German idealist thing. After Kant, there was a whole issue of having a unified rational understanding of anything, and therefore whether like the world was even rational and philosophy was even possible. And there was a negative understanding that if philosophy was possible, the world itself has to be rational. And if the world itself is rational, the world is absolute, meaning that it has no other, it's not in relationship to another, doesn't dissolve into another, it's not conditioned by another. So, call it the universe, call it God, call it whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just like the domain of reality or being or existence, whatever.
That's
Whatever
Spinoza's
this is.
substance, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it can be likened to something like that. The point is, whatever reality is, it makes itself real. There isn't another that would make it real because it is reality. Whatever's outside reality doesn't exist. It's not real. It is nothing. It's not even a possibility because possibilities belong to reality. So the nothingness doesn't exist. It has no efficaciousness. Therefore, it can't determine anything. Reality as a whole has to be self-determining. And because of that, the way to understand it has to be, consequently, some principle that's going to develop and generate out of itself all the differences. It's going to be a one that makes many and returns back to a one because the many don't fall apart infinitely. Can't do that.
Isn't that also like the first problem of philosophy, like the one and the many, at least of Western philosophy?
Uh,
Like,
it's a
if
very early
everything,
one.
yeah, it's if everything is goes into one, or if there's like a multitude of things. That was like the first ever question that philosophers like wrestled with that we know of.
No, it wasn't really the first question. Many questions came before that, but it's one of the consequences of Parmenides' philosophy, which is the first pure philosophy.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, the world has to be that way because there's no other way that it could be. And if the world is that way, then our own reasoning, if we ever want to know the world, has to be that way too. Therefore, the whole German idealist project, including Hegel's, is a search for some rational understanding which will make this an actual instance uh, of reason itself, where reason can generate itself as reasonable, just as the universe generates its own existence and makes itself be the thing that it is. That's the basic gist. And then along with this comes a whole issues about the problems where epistemology, the way we know things, and ontology, the structure that we believe things has, go hand in hand and have a very problematic relationship, which leads to skepticism. And in order to get the whole thing started, you have to beforehand do something about skepticism. Because the usual ways that people have tried to answer them, oh well, just do experiments, man. Just do science. Doesn't work. And just assume things because they're pragmatic doesn't work. And well, we don't have certainty, but we have probability doesn't work.
So where do we start?
a lot of these guys had just different ideas about like what that conception would require. Hegel's the first guy who really gets to the core and says, well, behind all of these, there's a giant assumption that everybody makes, which is they know what reason is, and they know what it is to be rational. Therefore, we must first investigate reason, and the only way to investigate reason is, well, guess what? Being a good scientist of thought, which is, in order to find out what's going to happen as a consequence of an experiment, you do the experiment. So, we got to think.
When you say everyone knows what reason is and what rationality is, I'm assuming you're ruling out people with schizophrenia?
Yeah, those people would not be the people who would be capable of knowing. Okay. Or children, or people with undeveloped faculties of thought.
Okay, so you're talking about a very specific group of people, right?
Yeah, people who are capable of metacognition.
Okay.
And so, to make any judgments whatsoever about anything, we're always employing reason. We're always employing some concepts, which are not really empirical concepts. We don't get them from experience. We just have them. You don't learn about causality from experience. The reason you see causality in experience is because you already think causally. Animals, for example, think causally just like we do. They just don't think about the concept of causality. They don't think about what is causality itself. They intuit causal relationships, and they work with them. But, they don't know these concepts.
It seems like, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems like you're talking in absolutes.
Yeah, this requires absolutes because it's a system of absoluteness.
Is this something that you believe, or is this something that he states is true?
It's something that has to be true according to any understanding of existence.
Okay, so you couldn't be wrong about it.
Nope, can't be wrong.
Gotcha.
It's no more than you could be wrong that a triangle has 3 sides. It's impossible.
Sure. If we agree on the definition of a triangle.
You don't have to agree on a definition of a triangle. Like,
yeah,
make a triangle.
Yeah, you do, because I can define a triangle as having 4 sides.
Well, then you'd be wrong because it's 3
But
angles.
it's
literally in the name. If you say a 3 angle has 4 angles, then you literally are abusing language and just being obstinate.
I would agree. AW, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Right.
So then the issue is not a definition issue. Do you understand?
It is.
No, it's not.
We act every day on definitions.
No, what you gave me is a problem not of definition. You gave me a problem of naming and of naming conventions. What if I call a quadrangle a triangle?
An exception to the rule.
That's not an exception. You literally just gave me an issue of names. You didn't give me an issue of definitions.
Show me a triangle with 5 sides,
That's why I'm saying I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm saying it depends on what you define as a triangle.
But do you understand, like,
what
the
wrong.
word? The word already tells you what it is.
If we agree that a triangle has 3 sides and 3 sides only, yes, I would be wrong. But if we agree that a triangle has 5 sides and 5 sides only, we would both be right.
But then it's not a triangle. Okay, do you understand that the name tells you what it is?
If we agree
but okay, well, we don't go by your definitions. You don't get to make up language.
Words have usages, not meanings. I can use it however I want.
Real quick. If I say look at the moon and I point and you look at my finger, do you think that's the moon?
No, but it depends on how I define a moon. If I define a moon as,
you don't.
What you think is I know I don't. I'm not saying I do. I'm saying someone could though.
No, they can't.
No.
Yes, they can.
You can't
no, they can't.
That. No.
No, they can't.
Are you telling me that they're incapable of?
Yeah, they are literally incapable because the only reason they would be doing that is literally to be obstinate for no other purpose than to play language games.
Okay, so they can do it then.
No, they can't.
You just said the only other reason.
No, look, the reason they can is because they already understand what I mean by the moon, and now they're playing language games and they say, "Oh, what I call that is bananas." Well, I don't give a fuck what you call it. You know that when you go to this.
Okay. What is a radio?
Radio, it's machine, some kind of technology we use. It plays sound, gets some kind of radio waves, whatever we call those. And if some guy says, look, that thing you call a radio, I call a banana, I don't give a fuck because that person's being retarded on purpose. I don't talk to retarded people.
Neither do I, right? we're in agreement, but you're aware that they can do that.
No,
They're
they
capable of doing
can't. They
They're
can't. They know
you
the
just
reason.
conceded that
Look,
they can
no, they
and they'd be a
can't. Okay,
retard.
do you understand? Like, that's what I mean. They can't. The reason they can play this language game is because they did understand what I said, and so they're not pretending. Like, it's not like a Chinese person who doesn't know English, and I don't know what the fuck a radio is called in English, but in Chinese, but it's certainly not what it's certainly not. It's certainly not called a radio. So if I say, look, radio, and that person says, I don't know. I'm not going to make some stereotypical racist thing about how Chinese sounds. But they say something in Chinese. They're not engaging in the same thing that a person who clearly knows English and says, actually, I just call it a banana. Well, that person is being obstinate and is abusing language on purpose to miscommunicate.
Sure, that may be the case.
So they can't
Ageism. So
actually
if you
mean something.
understand
Wait.
what a triangle
AW,
is, and then you
wait.
insist upon not understanding what a triangle is, that's you going against what you know to be not true. You understand that, right?
Right. So if I was brought up for 32 years to think that a triangle has three sides and believe that, right? And I've always called a triangle three sides, and now I switch tomorrow and say, you know what? I'm going to switch square and triangle and go
Three
with those
sides.
definitions.
You weren't brought up and conditioned to understand that a triangle has three sides. You're
Okay, well, that's what I was told. That's what I was told. I
your
learned that.
understanding is conditioned.
I learned that. Okay. But tomorrow, if I go, I want to switch, and now I want to call all triangles squares and all squares triangles.
Nobody just switches.
I can do
Yeah.
that, but I would be
Because you're
incompatible with
switching for the sake of
society.
switching.
You
know that, right?
I'm not saying I would do that. I'm saying that I could do
What
that.
would
and now
what
I would be
what
Yeah,
what
what
would
would be the
arouse
reason?
you to-
society?
Yeah.
What would be the reason? Do you think that's a rational thing to do?
No, in my personal opinion, no. But I'm saying someone could do that.
Right, but it doesn't matter that like they could like
So it's
decide to do something
irrational.
stupid. I don't
Yes,
talk to
I
stupid
agree.
people.
I agree.
So what is the meaningfulness of what you're bringing up? What is this issue that you think is meaningful?
All I'm saying, I'm not even arguing. I'm just saying they could do that.
And I'm telling you they couldn't.
Does it make it true though?
I know. I agree.
Does it make it true?
Yes, I agree.
You think that makes it true
think
that
the
a
thing
triangle?
is
If
that
someone
some
says that a
people.
triangle has five sides, you think it makes it true that a
I think we're
triangle has
past.
five
I think
sides?
we're talking past each other right now. I think we're in agreement.
No, we're not. No, we're not. No, we're not.
I'm
You're
simply
saying-
stating, and you've already conceded that they are capable of changing the definitions.
No, they
And
can't
it-
change the
but
definition.
They're not actually changing the
Okay.
definition.
They're changing word names. They're not changing definitions.
Do we have
You're
different definitions for a same word? Like, do you understand there's two different
A
definitions
triangle.
of the
A
word
triangle
awesome?
exists independent of.
Do you know that awesome has multiple definitions, right?
The problem is that you guys keep on equivocating between the use and the mention of a word, right? The use
Yes.
of a table is the four-legged object, right? But if I mention table, the five-letter word, that's a mention of it. So when you say, I can change the definition of a triangle, no, you're just changing the representation of those letters, right? But not the actual object or the
Correct.
metaphysical object that a triangle is.
Right, that's what
Yeah,
I told
but-
them.
so-
So you're
so
not
if-
you're not changing definitions.
but
You're just swapping
wait-
words around.
Wait a second, AW. If everyone died but me, right? And tomorrow I label triangles as squares and squares as triangles, that's my personal definition. That's what I'm going to live the rest of my life as.
No,
But
but
that's
how
not a
would everyone
definition.
die except you? Like you.
Why
have to
would you
come-
need a language? Why would you need a language to communicate if you're the last person alive? Like private
I'm just
languages
saying,
don't
like,
work anyway.
I'm just saying, like, if I still had my mind, right, and everyone died, I could change the definition of anything. I could call
But that's never
I
gonna
could
you
call the
have-
sky peanut butter.
But you haven't changed the definition. That's the thing. You're swapping words.
I
That
could
can
change the
never
definition
happen,
of a
though.
word
That's the
however I
funny
want
thing.
to. But in society, I'm gonna be, like you said, I'm gonna be incompatible with the majority of society. That's why I don't do it. But I'm saying you could do it if you wanted to.
But I'm saying you can't.
You think all things are socially determined?
Yeah, a lot of things are, yeah, for sure.
So a triangle is a socially determined thing.
I believe it's pretty definitive, but yeah, I believe it's not 100% like definitive.
There's degrees to it now. There's like percentages to it.
Well, yeah, I
Wow.
don't believe you can be absolutely certain about
I feel like
it.
you're just
Do all
making
the,
this up as
do
you
all
go
the
around.
degrees
Wow.
add up to
No,
180 degrees?
I'm saying I could be wrong about this, but this is what I believe.
Again, that's your belief. That's not a statement of the truth.
I agree. I never said it
And
was a
then that's
statement of
it.
the truth.
Okay, so then I don't get it. Then what
I've
was the
already
importance of
conceded that I
this?
could be wrong. But you know the AW, there's multiple definitions of the word awesome, for example, right? There's at least two.
Well,
Is
there's
that according to Google?
multiple concepts that accord with a same symbol, but it's clear from a context what that symbol is, which definition or concept that symbol is referring to.
Like okay, I hear what you're saying. Like if I said that the dropping of the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima, that was awesome, right? You could see how someone would get offended at that, and someone would be like, wait. It was technically awesome, right?
Yeah, yeah. You
Sure.
know, something that fills you
So
with
how
awe.
do we go about knowing what that person is actually talking about? If they're talking about awesome, like it's cool and rad,
Context.
or awesome? Yeah, but we have to agree on the definition of awesome,
No, you don't
before
have
we
to
can.
agree with it. I mean, like, well, in this case, one would assumes that
Then we're
everybody speaks.
confused.
Well, no, in this case, one assumes that everybody in conversation speaks English and that they are raised in the English language. You're not speaking to a foreigner. A foreigner can be confused by those things, but you, as a native
Right.
speaker, should not be confused. One, you can tell from the context of the conversation. Two, you can tell from the context of tones. Three, you can tell from the context of, facial expressions, body language, all these other things. There's many ways to tell and like immediately, in fractions of a second, understand what meaning was being meant.
Yeah. The reason I bring up this specific example is because that actually happened in Tokyo 40 years later when a Japanese American went over there and gave a speech about the nuclear bombs, and he described it to a crowd as being, 40 years ago, an awesome thing happened or an awesome bomb happened. And the whole crowd went, right?
Right, they're
They
not
didn't
native English
know.
speakers.
Right. He didn't mean that it was awesome, cool, and a good thing. He meant that it was awesome, technically, right? So we have to agree on the definition before we can continue. Otherwise, there's going to be confusion.
Not
I think that's fine,
necessarily.
but
Like,
I think what's the problem is that what one intends to say, right, is probably what the meaning is, right? Like if I say sup bitches and like it's like a kind sort of friendly way, that's the meaning of the word. It's like a greeting. But
Mhm.
obviously people if there's somebody there who I don't know, they could, be offended by it. They could take it in a way that I didn't intend, right? And ultimately, sure, that I should probably be, more accounting for people who I don't know, right? But at the end of the day, the meanings of those words were, misrepresented.
Sure.
So,
And to
you
avoid
know,
not getting beat up in that scenario, you would be like, oh, dude, sorry. I meant this in an endearing way, right?
yeah, and you can
yeah,
always do
Yeah.
that. I
So
mean,
now you agree on the definition of a certain thing, and yeah, you understand how you could be confused in the first place because he got mad at you for it.
hmm
Sure.
sure, but how's that relevant to a philosophical issue? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, we went from philosophy to kind of like a definitional thing, and I didn't mean to derail the conversation at all, but it's my personal belief that you need to be very, very specific in your definitions. I think definitions are one of the most important
I think
things.
there's
You
two
can,
problems though. There's two problems though. You're talking about the definition of a word, right? Like the word triangle or the word thing. But whereas what I think this guy's talking about is the definition of that object, right? Like what is it? What are the necessary and sufficient conditions to be this object that we call a triangle, right?
Yeah, that's what
So,
Hegel
but
would focus on.
you would agree, right, that he's agreeing with you that the definition of the word triangle, we could arbitrarily, on a whim, decide that triangle means, my left buttock, right? But at the end of the day, the reason it is triangle is because there are there's three angles to a triangle, right? That
Mhm.
it's actually talking about the composition of the object. So the definition of the object versus the definition of the word is where all this confusion comes from.
Sure.
No, yeah, like
That's
actually,
you.
if I can give like a little bit of a tangent on that. Sorry, go ahead. Crypto
Yeah,
dunes.
he's deliberately trying to make a tangential fallacy where he's insisting on talking about like the linguistic, like the socially agreed upon definition rather than the object as it is. Whereas like you're talking about the object as it is.
Yeah.
So that's him going on a tangent and thinking, well, that applies to that. Like that, it's not. You're talking about two different things. Like,
yeah, and actually, I just want to like mention something. Have you ever considered like there is an objective standard for like a hierarchy of like inferior and superior languages, where like the point of language is to communicate, between ourselves, and also to like keep things straightforward to ourselves as well. One of the interesting things that Hegel has is that Hegel thinks that there ought to be a unity between language and thought, where, the actual meaning of objects, what it is to be an object, is tracking along, or rather is tracked by the actual structure of language. And you can see this actually in ancient languages far less than you see it now today in current languages. Like, for example, English is just a god-awful language for thinking. Because the way that we relate to language is as this superficial, like, word symbol arbitrarily connected to some kind of object definition. Whereas in ancient languages, the object definition and the word symbols used actually track each other, so that, a certain word means a certain concept, denotes some kind of intelligible or sensible object. And, and then you have like the modifications, those would be the root words. And then you have the modifications like suffixes, prefixes, and all these other things that you could do, declensions, whatnot. And then these give like further concepts that modify the core concept and add upon it or take away from it. But you can see stuff connected throughout as an intelligible unity, not only of a concept, so that, for example, anything that would be circular would have something of the word circle as part of it. Or, anything that would be rational or relational would have these words as part of them. And you can see the unity of your own thinking and the unity of language itself. In English, that's not really possible. In English, we have the word reason, we have the word rational, we have thought, we have cognition, we have a lot of synonymous words and from different languages that happen to, be jumbled willy-nilly in our language. So that the way we relate to language is merely as these abstract symbols that have no inherent connection to each other. We're taught about, root words and prefixes, suffixes, all the way since elementary up until, through high school and stuff. But that's not the way we really engage the language. We don't experience language as a construction from roots to modifiers, like prefixes and suffixes and all these other things. We experience language more as a dictionary flipping kind of thing, where, the way I know something is I got to go look through the dictionary. I don't really look at what's the root prefix and suffix structure.
No, I would disagree with that. I would say the way we learn we learn about things is we literally point to them and we say, look, that's a horse, right? I'm not going to give you like the definition of a horse. I'm just going to point to a horse and say that's a horse. And you're just going to like intuit it.
Sure. Yeah. I'll agree with you on that. That is the majority thing, in which we have a direct symbol to symbolized relationship. But in that, we don't engage in the structuring of our language as, root words, prefixes, suffixes, and like having that kind of unity.
100%.
Because if we did, for example, people would realize in English that the word ratio and the word rationality and the word relational actually come from the same words, or actually the same root word. And this would give you a very good intuition about what reason is and what it is to think. But because we don't have a view of language with an eye towards that, and we don't really experience it that way, rather we experience abstract symbols relating to the symbolized, our language, by design, makes it very hard for people to like think about things in an intuitive way.
Do you think all of reasoning is based on associations?
No.
So what do you mean by like relationships? Like rationale?
Like the words like, this is a good analogy. Well, I think it's a good one. It seems intuitive to me. You know what a ratio is? A fraction, right? Or, well...
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
something like
one
one over
2.
2, 1/4,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. Which can also be related, put as just a direct ratio, like 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 2. That whole structure is a structure of reason. To be rational is to be something that is divisible into parts, but there are parts related to each other in a whole. That is the structure of anything that is intelligible. That is the structure of anything that is rational. So for whatever reason means, whatever it means to be reasonable or to be reasoning, can be easily seen to have the involvement of some parts to whole relationship, in which the whole is a whole only by virtue that it has parts, and the parts are only parts only insofar as they take part in the whole. Without the whole, there are no parts, there are no things. Without the parts, there is no whole, there is nothing.
Okay. I mean, sure. 100%. But I guess, why is that not association? Like, relationships kind of require like some sort of association in order for us to determine them.
Well, association is arbitrary, whereas this kind of association is not an arbitrary thing.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, for example, the relationship of a purely immediacy, to put it any better. Like, suppose you have an object that is supposed to be absolutely immediate, and immediate just means no mediation. So mediations involve anything that's in between. If there's nothing in between, there's nothing that separates.
Nothing in between what?
In between
the object
anything.
and you.
Yeah, it can't even be considered an object, because objectivity is a relational determination. So even concepts cannot be put in between the understanding of something that is purely immediate.
Mm-hmm. So if something has no relationships, you cannot understand it.
Right, and the consequence of that is that something which is purely immediate, which of which you may only be able to say it is, and all that the is means is immediacy. It's another stand-in name, which is even more immediate than immediacy. And when you go to like, okay, if I try to think this, I can't think, because thinking involves a reaching for relationships and unification or distinction of them. But here I have nothing. And quite literally, that's what it is. You go from an immediacy to nothing. And that relationship is not an association that I arbitrarily make. That's necessary to what is meant.
Right. So how do you get to nothing?
Well, if I tell you, you have an object that is absolutely immediate, think it.
Mm-hmm. It has no relationships, right?
Yep.
So you can't really know about anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't say, well, I can't know anything about it. No. There's not an it there for you to think.
Why? So it doesn't exist?
Well, yeah, it's supposed to be absolutely immediate. So I can't put myself between it. I can't put my thinking between it and myself. There cannot be a division.
Does that mean it doesn't exist?
Well, by the meaning of it, it's nothing. It does not stand out.
So when you say, why even bother talking about this thing that is completely immediate if it does not exist? Like, surely it doesn't even have the
because
property of being completely immediate.
Because it's a simple semantic proof. It's an association that is necessary by what it means. And you don't have to be told the definition of this is nothing. No, you can actually just be told this is absolutely immediate. Think about it. Or think it, rather. And your own reasoning will lead you to the consequence.
You're saying something that we basically know everything, or we can reason about things in virtue of the fact of relationships. And you're saying, look, imagine this object, or try to, conceptualize an object that is completely immediate without relationships that we cannot reason about, right? And then you're saying it's nothing. We're forced to say it's nothing because we can't reason about it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Well, in this case, you'd have to be proving what existence is.
Well, how do you prove something like that?
Well, in this case, you can prove that whatever is immediate is nothing. You know, we have the word nothing, as you know, that for which does not stand
So
out, that which is
existence
not
is
there.
mediation.
Right. It exists. So you would start by saying, like, well, existence is some kind of mediation. So if this thing is immediate, then yeah, it does not exist. It's not even a thing. It's just immediacy itself.
But you're still like predicating the concept. So like your existence would be like a predicate concept of that.
Yeah, you're muted. I remember you.
What did he? I didn't exactly hear what he said.
Oh no, Rev's a troll. He doesn't ever come to say anything useful on these topics. So yeah, the issue you're bringing up is legitimate, but it's only legitimate insofar as one has already worked out. Because the issue I was trying to describe to the atheist guy who was already left, unfortunately, guess we bored him. But we did go on a very long tangent, so he lost interest.
That's on me. Yeah, that's on me. I was just getting intrigued.